Well, good evening, and want to welcome you and for this Sunday evening, where we're talking about the Black history, where we are now, evolution of Black history. Burn Studio. I want to invite you for those who are joining me on Facebook, those who are joining me on YouTube, those who are joining me on TikTok, and also those on Instagram. I want to thank you so much to the chill down evening. I call it the chill down evening as well. This Sunday evening. Now, I tell you what is very interesting, ladies and gentlemen, and this is Black History Month, and Black History Month is a time in the UK whereby there's a lot of reflections as to where we are, where we are coming from, but also there's always the talk about we don't want just Black History Month just to be talking about Black history only for 1 month, but also it should be continuous. But also the other thing is this. What you have a situation whereby you have persons who are somewhat omitted or not discussed over the period of time. When you're talking about Black history, you always sometimes have the same, but at the same time, those same persons which have been mentioned many times before, they are not supposed to be ostracized from it, And Black history, where we are now, when one take a deep dive into the current state of Black history, culture, identity, today's world, we often reflect on the powerful legacy of the past. But what about the present? How far have we come? And where do we still need to go? The evolution of Black history, especially in music, film, and politics, where we explore the powerful intersections of music, film, and politics. We're seeing the evolution happening in the UK. We're seeing some dynamism changes in the music, in the film industry, shaping the Black experience and legacy. Throughout history, these three pillars have been the heartbeat of Black culture, driving social movements, telling untold stories, and influencing global perceptions of Black identity. I'm going to be joined tonight with my good friend, Mr. Anthony Francis, the author of Think It, Plan It, Do It Now. And we're going to take this few minutes up to an hour or so and just to have a discussion on this. Well, good evening. Good evening. How are you, Sir Anthony Francis?
Good evening, Selborne. Thank you for having me. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a very cool day in the UK. It's getting cold. But I want to tell you something though. When I was walking in the park yesterday, um, I was surrounded by some leaves, and I saw some leaves on the ground, and it's I have that lovely carpet of brown. And there's something that gave me this inspirational video to do. I saw all these leaves on the ground, and then I remember and I reflect that in a few months' time there's going to be spring, and there's going to be summer, and there's going to be a newness. But the key thing which I saw was this: let everything that needs to fall off fall off. Don't try to hold it. When those leaves start to fall off, let it fall. Let anything that needs to fall off for you, and don't follow it back. Don't go for it because there's newness coming. What do you think about that?
Well, I think what you're referring to there is there's a season for everybody and a season for everything.
Yes.
And I don't think we should try and force or try and make things come quicker than what they ought to come, because that's the way nature is, and I think that's how life is. I think
Yes.
sometimes we do try and force the issue on things. As human beings, we want things now rather than want to wait. And I think sometimes what nature actually does teach us is that we do have to wait.
Yes.
The winter, the autumn, the spring, these things come in their own time, and we can't actually make them come any quicker.
Yes. And ladies and gentlemen, I have Mr. Anthony Francis, and Anthony is the author of the book Think It, Plan It, Do It Now. And it is something which also, I must say, it's revolutionized my thinking also, whereby Anthony always challenge me and just say, "Come on, Silburn, have you think it? Have you thought it? Well, have you done it yet?" Can you just elaborate on the essence of the book? Because this is a part of Black history in the making. This book is now a part of Black history, I must say. Go for it,
Well,
Anthony.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for those kind words,
Yeah.
Selborne, and the endorsement of the book. I mean, the book in a sentence is really about people who have ideas and ambitions and simply want to actually implement those ideas and ambitions, but don't really know the path to follow, or they get distracted, or they procrastinate, or they lack the commitment to actually follow through. So, what this book aims to do is to provide that sort of structure to enable people to go through a sequence of events where they go through different chapters which challenges them. The first chapter, for example, is about commitment, and it challenges the reader to actually say, okay, so you want to do this particular thing, or you want to achieve this particular goal. How committed are you really to doing that? Because we know a lot of people will say they want things, especially at Christmas. We know what's going to come, the New Year's resolutions and all of those things. I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to be fit and all this sort of stuff, right? But how committed is the person to doing that? And what this tries to do is to provide some assurance and some guidelines to enable an individual who has an idea, has a goal, to actually have a structured approach as to how they go about doing it in a sequential way.
And the key thing, of course, what the book does have, it has key ingredients and something that you can go over regularly. You might think that you have missed something in the past. Well, you definitely will find that yes, you have missed it, because there's a Rima aspect of it. And I say the Rima like in the Word of God. Sometimes there are things that jump out at you at a particular moment in time. Thanks for that, Anthony. And ladies and gentlemen, the whole essence of this discussion is about Black history, and we are seeing that Black history is not just about 50,000 years ago, but it is every day and just recent. Anthony, this is Black History Month in the UK. What's your thoughts on it? It's October. In February is the United States. 1 month in the UK is October. What's your take on it, sir?
Well, I'm in the camp of Denzel Washington. I watched the video of him a few years ago where he was asked a question about Black History Month, and he actually replied by saying that he didn't like Black History Month. And the reason why he didn't like it, he said, was because is there a White History Month? Is there an Asian History Month? Is there a Chinese History Month? And I think the point he was trying to make
Morgan Freeman or Denzel Washington? Is it Morgan
sorry,
Freeman?
I mean Morgan Freeman.
Morgan
Sorry,
Freeman,
Morgan
yeah,
Freeman.
yes. Yeah.
And I think the point he was trying to make was, we don't want to pigeonhole Black history into just a month, whereby we talk about it and then after in November we then forget about it. Black history is history all year round. So, I mean, I'm pleased that, it is recognized and we are talking about Black history, because it gives us an opportunity to really identify some of those people who have been quite relevant in actually creating that Black history that we're talking about. But I think, in terms of having Black History Month per se, I think Black history isn't just a month. It's an all year round activity, and we contribute to it. Even on this show, show is about Black history. We're talking about events that are happening. Your program goes out weekly to an audience. That in itself is making history by being a online entrepreneur who is on YouTube, creating a platform where people like myself can come on board and talk about issues of the day and promote their products or services. So, it's not just about October, it's about all year round, where people can actually be appreciated for what they've done and their contribution.
And you're right about that. It is about the widening the thinking, move away from the narrow scope of what is Black history, the typical way. But we have got a lot of young people out there now looking for high level of leadership in many respects. And what they're looking for is persons like us to sort of explore some of the rational in respect of Black history. If you can sort of, what we said was, sorry, I'm just hearing feedback. I don't know if it is myself or sometimes I've got other things opening on there or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, the my train of thought just went a while ago. In the aspect of music, film, and politics, we're seeing some dynamism change. And I don't know if we want to let's touch on politics first. Let's touch on politics, and especially in the UK, we're seeing a sort of change, a sort of evolution when it comes on to, even within the Conservative Party, for argument's sake, with the rise of the Kemi Badenoch, with the rise of the James Cleverly, who are putting themselves forward as candidates to run for the leadership and ultimately to be a prime minister, if anything. What's your take on that? You speak while I look for something. I hear a little background thing in the talk.
Okay. Well,
elaborate on that.
I think what those individuals are really doing is they're building upon the shoulders and the platform that's been created by Barack Obama becoming the president in the United States. I think what that demonstrated to people was that, in a country where race is something which is quite polarizing, to have somebody like Barack Obama, with even his name, reach the heights that he has done and has become the president of the United States, not once but twice, because obviously he was re-elected. I think what it demonstrates to the wider public in terms of Black community is that it is possible to achieve those levels of success. And I think what we're seeing now in the UK is individuals who are seizing the moment and suddenly realizing, okay, well, if it's good enough for Barack Obama, then it's good enough for me to try and put myself forward. I'm not going to sit back in the shadow and think that it's somebody else who is better than me, or somebody else has more experience than me, or actually, I've got better ideas. So I think what we're seeing, especially with the fact that Rishi Sunak actually did become the prime minister, the first Asian prime minister in the UK, first Black prime minister. I think what that demonstrates is that the glass ceiling that was there has actually now fallen, and it's provided an opportunity for all those now who are coming after him, like the Kemi Badenochs, like the James Cleverleys, and the like, Priti Patel and others, to really actually make a stamp for themselves and say, we're part of the fabric of the UK and we're actually making a difference ourselves.
No, that is really interesting, and likewise, you've seen it's permeating in all different facets of the UK political life, because you had in Ireland there was I mean, it's gone now, but there was a Black guy, and also in Scotland there's also a Black guy as well. They've gone now, but at the same time, you're seeing like it is becoming normal. And what it is, I was at the House of Commons some years ago, whereby I was a part of this Operation Black Vote scheme with Operation Black Vote with the Shadow MP scheme, and I took some young people to the House of Commons, and I said to them, don't treat the House of Commons or Parliament as not yours, but to treat it as yours. Treat it as now you are a part of it, and this is your home in a way, not to see it as some extension as well. And I believe that is a sort of message which needs to come through as much as possible with Black persons in the UK, especially with the advent of the ceilings which have been broken by Barack Obama, the ceiling which have been broken by Rishi Sunak, whereby people can move comfortably into these areas as well.
Well, I think you're right. And I think, once people see those ceilings have been broken, then it opens the floodgates for other people to suddenly say, well, hang on a minute, if they can do it, I can do it. And it means that perception, that sort of negative bias or self-doubt that they may have had that was holding them back from applying for that senior role in a company, or for, starting that business idea, or for thinking, should I do this or should I do that? Suddenly it makes it more real, because they're seeing people like them in places that before were simply they were excluded from. So it creates a really it creates a really good opportunity for individuals to be both seen as being people who get momentum, who are inspired by, and who actually feel as if they can actually do the things that they're seeing these individuals do, because they're realizing there's no difference now. And I think what that does is not at the sort of senior levels that we're seeing in the public domain, but I think also in the private domain, where, as I mentioned, in organizations where before perhaps we know there's been a really an unfortunate showing of Black leaders in the FTSE 100, for example. I believe there's only one Black director sitting in the FTSE 100. And similarly, we're seeing similar sort of figures, lowly figures like that in football. There's only one Black director, I believe, in the Premier League, and that's Les Ferdinand for Queen's Park Rangers. So, you wonder why there aren't more Black people in those positions, considering that, we make up the majority of the football playing players. And we have other
Yeah.
other white players who have retired and become managers, and yet we don't see any of our own retired players reaching to those heights. So once I think we start seeing those people come through, I believe that I think it will have a knock-on effect in industry and all walks of life.
What about the police force? I mean, you had persons like David Michael. You have Leroy Logan in the police force, the black police force, like in the UK. I know sometimes they're saying it's too racialized. It is racism. People should stay away from that. My view always is to get in there, and be a part of the whole process and to change it from within. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I think if you're on the outside constantly criticizing something, then you're not actually affecting any sort of change. And I think, sadly, what's perhaps happened with the police force over here, and there may be legitimate reasons why it's happened over here, similar to what's happened in the US, is that the police aren't trusted. And the police are perhaps seen as being institutionally racist, which is what they've been categorized as in a recent report by the Macpherson inquiry. So that doesn't lead kindly to prospective individuals thinking, what, I'll actually join the police force. The stigma of joining the police force will be something that they're thinking about. How will they be seen by their family and friends? And of course, they'll be thinking to themselves, well, I don't see too many people in the police force who are perhaps like me in senior roles. Is it just, a token tick box if I get the position? So,
Yeah.
I think there's a number of reasons why black people, perhaps in certain industries like the police, don't want to put themselves forward because of stereotypes, because of perhaps biases, and also for legitimate reasons, they perhaps feel that the institution itself isn't going to lend itself to their development.
Do you think that when it talks about Black history, and before we go on to some other examples, when we talk about Black history, you talk about the Black community, but the Black community at the same time is not all the same. You will have persons who are coming from the Caribbean here. You have persons who are born here with parents from the Caribbean. You have persons who are coming straight out of Africa who have never experienced any sort of slavery or whatever like that. Um, and everyone is come together as one block. Do you think that is a factor which is doesn't help by just categorizing as one the Black community?
Well, yeah, I mean, clearly you can't have a catch-all
Hmm.
for a number of different cultures, which is what the term black is implied to do. So by saying black, by default, we're saying Asian, we're saying anybody who is non-white. And of course, people who are of non-white hue, like the Asians or other ethnicities, they may not want to be linked, or they may not want to be bundled into this single word that relates to a catch-all, which is black, which is why
Hmm.
I think over the last couple of years you've seen phrases like half caste, which was obviously
Yeah.
discarded. You've seen things like I think the BAME group, which was also
Yeah.
disbanded or people no longer use.
Hmm.
So we've seen all of these different variations of people trying to define us, and I don't really understand why, because we are part of the community like everybody else. We shouldn't be
Yeah.
seen as being black or white. We should just be seen as being you're Selborne and I'm Anthony, and maybe refer to us from our countries as being, in terms of our continents, we're from Asia or we're from the
Yeah.
Caribbean, rather than saying that we are black or white, because nothing in life is that simple.
So you're taking that quote from Martin Luther King, not even the quote directly, but you're actually saying a man should be judged on the contents of his character, not the color of their skin.
I 100%,
Mm.
and I think that has been the Martin Luther King speech then, as
Yeah.
is now. Sadly, we are still seen as being black and white, and that's how things are perceived. We all know that if somebody with an unusual name, for example, an ethnic name, applies for a job, by default, that person, the recruiter, already knows their ethnicity, already knows that they're perhaps non-white, and may have
Yes.
a pre-imposed bias, and suddenly think, well, you know, that the job has gone.
Mm.
And you know, those are the sorts of, and I've worked with clients in my coaching business where they've told me that what they've done is they've changed their surname, or rephrased their surname when they apply for jobs, because they know that if they use their normal name, they will simply not get shortlisted, which is terrible. But you
Well,
know, that's the world that we sadly live in.
you remember you remember John Lewis? You know John Lewis.
John Lewis.
That store, John Lewis. Well, when I first came to this country and I was at law school studying and I was doing some work with a company selling some advertisement slots, my name was changed to John Lewis to open doors. And I'm not lying, you know. However, the problem existed when I was being paid. They had to go and talk to those guys, honestly speaking, because and I did experience that initially. And you're so right. And that simple thing, as a young guy just coming to the UK and was sort of coached into it by the seniors by saying to open the door, because they Silburn City, people say, what? Where's that? Where's that from? But John Lewis, hey John, how are you, Lewis? And you're so right about that.
Well, I can give you a personal story
This is
whereby,
confession time. Confession time.
you know, whereby I actually I rang a recruiter about a particular job. This is obviously many moons ago,
Yeah.
and the recruiter felt that I had the right background, the right experience, etc. And we arranged the time to meet at their office. And then when I arrived and met the recruiter who I'd been talking to on the phone, he said to me, "You sounded European on the phone."
Mm.
Right? So by default, he had already had in his mind that I was not of a black person or not of a person of color, and
Right.
was surprised. And you know, because it's very unusual for someone to say, "Oh, you sounded European on the phone." What does that
Yeah.
imply? So, you know, these are the sorts of things that sadly we have to deal with, and we have dealt with, and in history and in black history, we have dealt with. And those people who have gone before us, we stand on their shoulders now, because they have been the ones who broke those ceilings. They have been the ones whose shoulders we now stand on, and doors that are open for us to push forward,
Yeah.
despite the fact that we are still getting some resistance. But you know, the resistance that we're getting now is nowhere near what people in the past have had to go through, in terms of the prejudices, the biases, and the discrimination that they've had to face.
That's very interesting, and breaking down those walls. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here. I'm with Anthony Francis, author of Think It, Plan It, Do It Now. We're looking at Black history, where we are now. I'd love for you to, if you want to, share your experience. Those who are watching on the replay, what experience you have when it comes on to maybe changing your name to get in the door, or with your name being deemed as European, and you get into the door and they see who you are. Does it made a change? Let us know. Anthony, another thing also is that there are persons who are out there that somehow they are being overlooked when they because many times we sort of grab onto the typical names when it comes on to Black history, and there are other names which are out there which are very inspirational, and we sometimes miss them at the same time. What's your take on that? And it's
Well, you're right. I think, you know, in your intro, you talked about three categories: music, film, and politics. We've just touched on politics, and we've seen the breakthrough there. And of course, you know, we have had black or ethnic minority members in the past in the UK who have held positions in local government, but perhaps they weren't recognised or they weren't spoken about. Somebody who comes to mind is somebody called Sam, who was, I think he was the first leader of Lewisham, I believe it was.
Sam King, Mr. King. I was supposed to interview him, but he passed away before I reached out.
Right.
Yes.
You know, so Sam King, you know, the fact that Sam King was the first mayor of Lewisham, by default,
Southwark. My apologies, Southwark.
Yeah, by default, he is actually the shoulders now Sadiq Khan is standing on, in terms of, you know, where he is now in London, because Sam has broken down that ceiling. It meant that people like Sadiq now, who obviously has been the London mayor for the last 3 terms, has had the opportunity to come through. And you know, it's because of people like Sam King, who we don't really talk about, but he was the pioneer that first obviously made that happen. So there have been lots of pioneers that have provided the sort of the roadmap, which is now being followed by others. And interestingly, you know, if we talk about the music industry, for example, I mean, I recently watched a program that talked about how in the past, black artists like Billie Holiday, the group Chic, who's well known, and others, Chuck Berry, all of these artists, when they got their contracts in the early 40s, 50s, and 60s, you know, they didn't get any publishing, they didn't get any royalties, they didn't get any rights for their music. They were paid a one-off fee, maybe a few $100 or whatever it was. And in fact, in some cases, you know, in the program that I saw, Chuck Berry, for example, his famous song Tutti Frutti, there are 3 people who are classified as being the creators of that song. Obviously, Chuck Berry's on there, but there are 2 other people who had no relevance to the creation of it whatsoever. They were simply, one was a DJ who used to play the records or play black music. He was credited on there, and the other one was the owner of the building where the studio was in. Yes. And this was a common thing that was done back in those days, which is why now we're seeing artists like Jay-Z or 50 Cent or any of those, you know, Snoop Dogg, the sort of, and over here now we've got people like Stormzy who have created their own labels. They've created their own record companies so that they own the publishing, they own the rights to their material. They're not beholden to anybody else anymore. And I think what has happened in the music business is the black artists have seen how other artists have been taken advantage of in the past, and they have simply learnt from their mistakes, quite rightly, and have actually pushed forward.
No, that's very interesting, and also you got persons like, let's use this classic example, Ben Carson. Let's look at Ben Carson for arguments. And I was thinking about it there. We spoke about it. Ben Carson's, okay, he was in politics with Trump, and maybe that is where many people heard of him, and maybe many people have stigmatized him because of his association. But there was something bigger about Ben Carson: gifted hands. You know, there's a guy.
And this is a fantastic film for anybody who hasn't actually seen it yet. It's an old film. It's been out a good few years now, and the good thing is that Ben Carson himself is still alive and kicking, and actually, you know, active in politics. And the story really highlights the fact that this was a young lad who, when he was at school, was identified as being dumb. He was classified by his classmates as being the dumbest kid in the class, and he even actually called himself stupid to his mum because he always got his questions wrong. And what the film highlights, without giving away the end result, is that actually he wasn't dumb. It was just the fact that he had dyslexia and couldn't actually see the text on the board that the teacher was writing, so he needed glasses. Yes. And the good thing, and the real inspirational story about, obviously, with this particular individual, is that he went on from being somebody who was called dumb to actually being one of the top surgeons in the world for dealing with child and adolescent surgery to do with cranial and brain surgery in particular. And you know, he's credited as being developed some of the, you know, most cutting edge technologies in the world today. And this is somebody who was first of all classified as dumb and stupid. But this is somebody who
used to call him dummy, isn't it? Yeah.
I beg your pardon?
They used to call him dummy. True Life Summer Boy went from class dummy to brilliant pediatric neurosurgeon. Yeah.
Correct. But again, this is somebody who is a living legend in terms of Black history, making waves. But we very rarely sort of take time out to acknowledge people like this who have actually made a significant contribution and continue to do so. And we do sometimes perhaps reflect too much on the past and not on these individuals of the present who have, again, laid the foundation and continue to do so.
And who are living and alive and well and can actually blast more, what should I say, ceilings open for the Black community.
Well, yes. And actually, just on that topic, Selborne, and in preparation for the show, I mean, obviously, I am aware of some of the other Black inventors, but there was a few that I wanted to just highlight just for your
Yes.
listeners, perhaps who aren't familiar, but who have actually made a significant contribution. So I just made a note. Just if you just, I'm just going to look to my notes on the left. But the first one that I wanted to just highlight to people was a gentleman by the name of Lewis Latimer or
Mm.
Latimer. Now, Lewis, for some people, the reason why he's famous but not well known is because he actually invented the filament, which is inside the tungsten light bulb that enables us to see light today. So everybody knows who invented the light bulb itself was Thomas
Mm.
Edison. But what many people don't know is that the actual filament inside the bulb that enables the light to maintain that we can all see was actually invented by a black man. And but yet it's very rare do we actually hear anything about this particular individual, Lewis Latimer. The other person I wanted to just highlight for people, which is a very common product that we use today that many people perhaps take advantage of, is the iron board, which was invented by a lady by the name of Sarah Bone. Sarah Bone
Yeah.
invented the iron board, which obviously way back in the 30s and 40s, again a product that we take for granted now, but was invented by a black person. And I just got two more for your listeners, which might surprise people. Everybody's familiar with the IBM computer, but maybe what
Mm.
they're not familiar with is that the IBM computer is made up of 9 key patents of design. 3 of
Yes.
those patents are held by a man called Mark Dean, who is a black man who invented the bus system. It's a technical term that enables the computers to talk to each other. He
Yeah.
actually invented that for IBM and is credited as being one of the actual inventors of the IBM computer. Nobody
Yeah.
knows about Mark Dean. And the final one I wanted to share with your viewers is James West. Now,
Mm.
James, the reason why I wanted to leave this one to last is because James West invented the microphone.
Wow.
Now, again, no one knows, the very product that you're talking into, and
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
talking into, it was invented by a black person. Again, no one knows anything about these individuals. They're not spoken about, but yet we've made significant advancements and significant contributions to Black history in terms of where we stand, and some of the products and services that we use today originated from Black individuals.
And also there was a man. There's a man as well, a black inventor. Um, in 1960s, strapped on his safety hood and dragged rescuers to safety, but racism prevented him from being hailed as a hero. Just before midnight, at the close of a hot summer day in 1916, a natural gas pocket exploded 120 feet beneath the waves of the Lake Erie, happened doing work on Cleveland's waterwork tunnel. A 10-foot wide underwater artery designed to pull in water from about 5 miles out beyond the city polluted shoreline. The blast left it twisted. 2 rescue parties entered the tunnel searching for survivors, but they lacked proper safety equipment for the smoke and fumes. 11 of the 18 rescuers died some 11 hours later. Desperate to save anyone still alive, the Cleveland police turned to who? Garnet A. Morgan. Who is Garnet A. Morgan? um,
Garner A. Morgan is
yes,
somebody who sadly does not get mentioned either.
yes.
This is the man who invented effectively the gas mask, which was also used in the World War Two.
Mm,
This mask was the prototype that has obviously been developed and obviously built upon. Now that we have now a more sophisticated version, but this was
mm,
invented by a black man who we never hear of. And next month is Remembrance Sunday, where we'll be talking about people who actually fought in the wars and actually made significant contributions and gave their life. But actually, this individual, Mr. Clifford, he actually
yeah,
invented the actual apparatus that
mm,
allowed individuals to go to war, to actually, even in environments where there's gas that we see now today, be it fires or chemical explosions, he invented the gas mask, but we never
yeah.
hear of him.
Never heard of him. I mean, and it is today when we're speaking about it that I heard of him. You know what I'm trying to say? And I'm sure that this is such a wealth of information that persons need to know, and to look at the different things around them and say, hang on a second, that's built by a black person. But then after a while, one has got to, it resonates something and say, hang on a second, just like this guy from Grey Anatomy, I think he said, just because we're magic, we actually bleed still. You know, but there's a magicness about our people as well, and I think it's important. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say as well, if you know of any persons, as I said, that you think that people do not know, put their name down, write it down, and put it on the YouTube channel or so, to sort of educate us as much as possible in regards to this. There's also these ladies, because I was looking at the film that came after I heard of Gifted Hands, the film Hidden Figures came alive to me again, and these ladies actually played a fundamental role, Anthony. You know?
Yes, they did, and again, in fact, the good news is that the film Hidden Figures enabled these ladies who had been consigned to dusty books and forgotten about to actually be given their rightful place in history in terms of their involvement in saving the Apollo mission. Yes. It was their mathematical genius in calculating various technicalities within the actual design and the calculations that enabled the safety of that particular Apollo mission to be successful. And rightly so, they're now being given the credit that's due. But until that film Hidden Figures came out, nobody had actually heard of them. And actually, if you actually watch the film, you'll see that prior to them actually doing the actual calculations, there were periods in the film where they weren't even referred to by their own names. Yes. I think what happened was on one of the reports that one of the ladies did, she was told not to put her name on the report because they would know that it was her, that she was black. It wouldn't actually be accepted. So this is the sort of prejudice that black people have had to overcome, and have actually had, and we've other people now have built upon. But again, we never talk about these individuals. These are the shoulders that we're now standing on that has enabled future scientists to actually move forward in Apollo missions, or other individuals to come forward. But it shows the breadth. We've just talked about 6 or 7 industries, Selborne, whereby black people have contributed significantly to the history, not just of black individuals, but to history, but to how we actually work and use things today. The microphone, the iron board, computers, the lights. These are things that black people have actually contributed to that we just don't talk about. We seem to always fall back to a default of our past in terms of maybe slavery and the challenges we've had. And yes, we did have a very difficult first period, but I think what we should really recognize and celebrate is the history that black individuals have contributed to, that have enabled people like in the music industry, the film industry, and politics now to actually do the things that they're doing.
And I think that is one of the essence of what's his name, Daniel, the actor there, and I just play a clip.
Registrar General Department.
Sorry, that's the wrong one. Daniel Columba.
Yeah.
And the very interesting thing about Daniel is, and I just play this very quickly. Here we go.
Got a statue in Leicester Square, London. It's mad. How do you feel?
I feel it's very surreal. It's out of body experience, literally. That's my body out of me. But so yeah, it's very humbling. I feel very grateful.
Unveiled this morning, this new permanent statue was voted by the public and comes from his 2017 film, Get Out. The iconic moment is called The Sunken Scene. The Oscar-nominated movie is a dark comedy horror on race relations in modern America.
just feel like really blessed that like I can even have a piece of work that people want to watch, let alone people want to memorialise. You know what I mean? So it's that's the sort of thing. It's like, for me, it was always like getting a job, getting paid.
Anthony, Daniel Youngman statue unveiled in Leicester Square. That couldn't have happened just by him only and his work. There must have been lots of work done before that by other persons that he's standing upon, isn't it?
Oh, of course. I mean, you know, the names that immediately come off the tip of the tongue are people like John Boyega, obviously Star Wars.
Yes.
You know, people. You know, it's people like that who have enabled people like Daniel to get the roles, as well as people in the US. You know, who fund these films. You know, like the Denzels and the Morgans of this world.
Yes.
But you know, and the Idrises. It's because of those individuals that people like Daniel can get those roles. And you know, in fairness to Daniel, he actually admitted that his first reason for taking the role was not perhaps the iconic scene we see there, but he simply wanted to get paid.
Yes,
because you know, I mean, he's being real. You know, there's no point in him trying to sell my craft. What a great story. He wanted to get paid because let's face it, opportunities for black actors and actresses are few and far between, and they're getting better now because of the likes of Daniel doing a good job. The fact that people now accept them in the mainstream and no longer will sort of have that sort of stigma that, oh, because there's a black actor or actress, we won't go and watch the film.
Yes.
I mean, I think you could say that where there is perhaps a bit of that bias still, or that sort of mindset, is on women's magazines, because very rarely do you see too many black women. And when you do see the black women who are on there, it's people like Tandy Newton, people who are slightly lighter in their appearance to fit in with the sort of the sort of model of the sort of European look. So, you know, and again, the reason why you don't see many black models on these magazines is because of the perception by the magazine owners that if you put a black model on there, it may not help sales. So, you know, seeing people like Daniel and the ones we've already mentioned, like Idris and John Boyega in those roles now, and being immortalized and being seen as ambassadors and role models and leaders, is fantastic, because it means that the next generation will see these young actors and actresses as people who have actually broken the glass ceiling, and they'll now apply for these roles and with the expectation that they can get them because they've seen people like them get them.
And then we're having the trendsetters like Tyler Perry, who is actually with his studio producing all these shows, reaching out, coming from the whole base of opera as well. At the same time, these persons play their fundamental role. You know, that's where Tyler.
And I think people like Tyler Perry, again, it's a mindset. Tyler Perry famously said that Hollywood didn't invite him to the table despite his success. So he said what he did was he built his own table. And by doing so, he actually built his studio in Atlanta, which is a fantastic studio, by the way. Those who haven't been to Atlanta should visit it. And, you know, by doing so, it now means that he provides opportunities for himself to write the films, to direct the films, to produce the films with the artists that he wants in the films. And when you actually watch his films, yes, there's quite a lot of black actresses and actors in there, but there are also white actors and actresses also. I mean, he hasn't exclusively left out other minorities, but it means that he's provided an opportunity where perhaps other black artists and actors wouldn't get the opportunities to be in big budget films like what he's now making, if it wasn't for the likes of people like Spike Lee and others who have gone before him.
What's that Spike Lee movie made? What is it again? What's got it? Who's got it? What was that old film? Who's got it? Or
yeah, I know the one. I think My Age. If I remember that one,
it's a black and white film.
Away My Age.
Yes, and New Jack City and all. But listen, the whole issue now is this, and now we have sort of set the stage. Is there any? What are the blockages then in the way for the upliftment and the breaking through of the black race, the black community? Is there anything in the way that can stop us?
Well, to be frank, I don't think there's anything in the way, and I don't think there was anything in the way in the past, because the people that we've just reeled off, they had far greater disadvantages against them, and they were able to achieve, things that we're still talking about today. In terms of things like the IBM computer or the light filaments. So I think what it really comes down to, Selborne, is a mindset. If the individual wants to achieve, and they have the commitment to achieve, and they can see that other people have achieved before them, then there's nothing stopping anybody, regardless of their race or color. In particular, you mentioned about the Black community from achieving their goals. I mean, we've talked about people like James Cleverly, Kemi Badenoch, and Rishi Sunak. These individuals have reached offices of state that were unthought of many years ago. Barack Obama, and they've broken not just the ceiling; they've broken right the way through into the stratosphere. And this really should be quite humbling for us to think that these people have now provided a roadmap that enables us to actually now push forward. So there's nothing stopping us at all except our own mindset, our own goals, our own ambition, our own self-doubt. If we can get past that self-doubt of we can't do, and using Barack Obama's famous line, "We can do," yes we can. Then I think that statement of "yes we can" is really all we need, because there's nothing stopping us, nothing whatsoever.
In closing, so what do you say then to persons who conflate policies and race? Let's use Kemi as an example. She's a conservative, and but at the same time, she's a woman who's rising to the top, and there's a strong possibility if the Conservative win the next election and she's still there, she's the first Black prime minister. But then persons will say, "Oh, she's a blah blah blah." Don't trust these persons. What do you say about that when people are not sort of encouraging and supporting someone like Kemi, Black persons, for argument's sake?
Well, I think that's very small-minded, and I also think it's a small minority of individuals who would have that view, because let's face it, if you're not part of the solution, it means you're part of the problem. What she's doing, rather than actually talking about it, she's putting herself forward and being part of the solution by actually sort of saying, "Look, I'm good enough to be the leader of the Conservative Party." So I think those people who come forward with those sorts of mindset, they, sadly, I would say that they're perhaps still in a minority of feeling victimized. They're trying to sort of say, well, we can't do this because of this or because of that, when actually there's nothing stopping us from doing anything. There's nothing stopping anybody from achieving what they want. And so I would say to anybody who is out there with that sort of mindset, look at the big picture now. Look at what has been achieved. Look at what Black people have done in the past who no one has heard of or doesn't get spoken about, and see what achievements they have made when they had hardly any support whatsoever. And going forward, look at what the individuals who do have that technology, networking, and opportunities now that those people in the past never did. Look at the things that are now possible, and they should reframe their mindset to not that we can't, but yes we can.
Anthony, that's a great opportunity to leave on. And if I had the rights to this particular music, I would play it right now. But anyone and everybody, you can play this music. Ain't no stopping us now. Ain't no stopping us now. We've got to move, But if I do it, I'll get copyright flagged. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on tonight with Anthony Francis. And I believe that it was a great opportunity to just really look at the whole issue of Black History Month, but Black History. As a matter of fact, I did not say Black History Month. Notice I said Black History. Where are we now? Any last word, Anthony, with Think It, Plan It, Do It Now? Yes.
Well, my last words would be that anybody out there now, it's the opportunity for them to write their history. Your legacy is right now, and that legacy could be in your community, in your organization, or in your family. Black history starts right now. Be part of the solution, not part of the problem, and create your own.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I'm not going to say any further. I will not spoil it. Write your legacy today and now, so others can actually read into it, listen to it, and actually follow it. Because Anthony, The roadmap is there. Someone was saying earlier today that along a motorway or so, you got all these little lanes and these little racks or these little what do you call it? The lanes in the road or something like that. So it is set already where we can go, and nothing should be able to stop us. All right. Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you so much for joining tonight. Remember to like and subscribe to the show on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and remember, as I said earlier, please do let us know of any artists or any persons that nobody knows that you like to say. And of course, if you had a situation in your life whereby you had to change your name to go further, or you had to, when you went in there and they realized who you were, that made a change of it as well. Let me hear what somebody's saying here. Donovan Grant said, well said, Anthony. All things are possible for Black people. The doubters need to see themselves in a bigger way. Great interview, brothers. Awesome. I want to thank you so much. And that's it. And bye-bye. Thank you.